Welcome back to By the Pages. Are you ready for another deep dive?
I am.
Me too. Always love these. Today we're going to be looking at the Book of Ruth.
One of my favorites.
It's a great story. Short, but very powerful.
Yeah. A lot packed into just 4 chapters.
It is. We've got 3 sources today.
Okay.
A YouTube video that kind of gives us a nice overview, a text summary with a little bit more detail. And then, of course, we always go to the source material, the Book of Ruth.
Yeah.
I mean, if you had to sum it up in just like, a couple of sentences, what's the story about?
Well, it's a story of loyalty, redemption.
Yeah.
And I think it shows how God works
Yes.
in those unexpected ways.
Yeah, and it's during a really kind of turbulent time in Israelite history, right?
Yeah. The time of the judges. The book opens with, in the days when the judges ruled, which was a time marked by chaos.
Yeah.
And a lack of strong leadership.
Yeah, a lot of ups and downs.
Definitely.
So that really sets the stage for the story.
Yeah, it does.
And then we're plunged into this personal tragedy right away.
Yes.
Famine strikes Bethlehem, and it forces this family, Elimelech, his wife Naomi, and their 2 sons, to seek refuge in Moab.
Which, interesting.
It is interesting. Moab was considered enemy territory.
Oh.
Yeah, a place associated with pagan worship.
Wow. So they're going to their enemy for refuge.
It really highlights the unexpected turns life can take.
Right.
Forcing us to confront our assumptions.
Yeah.
About where we find security.
Yeah.
And hope.
That's so true, because, you would think that your enemy would be the last place that you would go to.
You would think.
For safety or for sustenance, but
sometimes.
that's where you end up.
That's where you end up.
Yeah. And then things just seem to go from bad to worse.
They do.
Elimelech dies, leaving Naomi a widow, and then her sons, they marry Moabite women,
right,
with Ruth and Orpah, but then they die too. Yes.
And so Naomi's completely alone.
It's a heartbreaking situation.
It is. And that's where we encounter Ruth's defining choice. Naomi decides to go back to Bethlehem.
Yeah.
And she encourages her daughters-in-law to stay in Moab.
Because she knows it's going to be hard for them.
Yeah.
As widows in a foreign land.
Right.
So Orpah stays. But Ruth, she makes a different choice.
A very different choice.
And it's a choice that reveals the depth of her character.
Yeah, her words are just so powerful.
They are.
She says to Naomi, "Entreat me not to leave thee, or to return from following after thee. For whither thou goest, I will go. And where thou lodgest, I will lodge. Thy people shall be my people, and thy God my God."
Wow.
She's basically saying,
she's all in.
Yeah.
It's a complete commitment.
Huh.
Ruth is willing to leave her homeland, her family, her gods, and even her potential future.
Right.
She's stepping into the unknown.
Yeah.
With only her loyalty to Naomi as her guide.
It's a pretty powerful statement of faith as well, I think.
It is. It really is.
Trusting that even in this foreign land, that she's going to find belonging and purpose.
Absolutely.
And then seemingly by chance enters Boaz.
Yeah. The way their paths intersect does seem serendipitous.
Right. She's seeking to provide for herself and Naomi, gleaning in the field of Boaz, and he just happens to be a relative of Naomi's.
It's like, what are the chances?
Right. But you're referring to the kinsman redeemer.
Exactly.
Okay, can you explain that a little bit? Because I think that's a concept that's kind of hard for people to grasp.
Yeah, it's not something we have today.
No.
But it was deeply ingrained in ancient Israelite society. According to Mosaic law, a male relative had a duty to protect the family's property and lineage.
Oh.
And they would often do this by marrying the widow and providing an heir.
So Boaz, as a relative of Naomi's deceased husband, he was in a position to fulfill this role.
Precisely.
So Boaz's generosity toward Ruth, it was admirable, but it was also kind of rooted in this social obligation.
Duty definitely played a part.
Yeah. But I think Boaz goes beyond mere obligation.
Okay.
He ensures Ruth's safety. He provides for her generously. He's described as a man of noble character.
Okay.
A term that highlights his integrity and compassion.
So it was a duty, but he also went above and beyond.
Absolutely.
So we see both of those things happening at the same time.
Right. Societal expectations and personal virtue.
Yeah. That's kind of a challenge to me.
How so?
It makes me think about how often I limit myself to the bare minimum.
Yeah.
Just fulfilling my obligations without really going above and beyond.
Right.
But Boaz is setting a much higher bar.
He is.
He reminds us that true nobility is about more than just doing what's expected.
Absolutely. And as the story unfolds, Naomi, She's ever resourceful.
She is.
She sees in Boaz a potential redeemer for both Ruth and the family line.
Wow.
And this leads to a rather intriguing turn of events in chapter 3.
Okay, this is where things get really interesting.
It does. Under the cover of night, Ruth approaches Boaz on the threshing floor.
Yeah.
I mean, this scene is just so laden with symbolism and, like, I don't know, a hint of scandal.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it might seem unconventional to us today.
Yeah.
But Ruth's actions were rooted in the cultural practices of the time. She was appealing to Boaz's sense of duty and honor.
I see.
It was a bold move, though.
Yeah.
Putting her vulnerability and trust in his hands.
And Boaz's reaction is crucial.
It is. He doesn't rebuke her or take advantage of her.
Yeah.
Instead, he admires her courage and reaffirms his willingness to act as redeemer. And he also notably refers to Ruth as a woman of noble character.
Well, it's the same phrase that was used to describe himself.
Exactly.
So both Ruth and Boaz are characterized by this noble character.
Yes.
Which highlights their shared values of loyalty, integrity, and compassion.
Right. It seems like a match made in, well, if not heaven, then certainly orchestrated by a higher power.
You think so?
I do, but there's a twist. There is. Boaz discovers another kinsman, closer in relation to Naomi, who has the first right of redemption.
Oh.
Yeah. So this seemingly throws a wrench into the budding romance.
Oh, I hate when that happens.
It does. It really raises the stakes of the story.
Oh, the suspense.
Right.
So does this closer relative step up and claim his right? Or does Boaz get the chance to fulfill his role as the kinsman redeemer? But before we get there, I want to highlight something that I found really fascinating.
Okay.
We've seen how human choices and seemingly random encounters shape this narrative. Yet there's this subtle but persistent feeling that something bigger is at play.
Like fate.
Yeah, or divine providence. That God is working behind the scenes, guiding events, even when his presence isn't explicitly mentioned.
Exactly. The way circumstances align the timing of encounters, the character's motivations, it all points toward a subtle but powerful force guiding the story toward a greater purpose.
I love that.
So, this closer relative, he has the right to redeem, but he's not so excited about it.
Yeah, why not?
Well, for one thing, it means he would have to marry Ruth.
Oh, right, a Moabite woman.
Exactly. And that's not really something he wants to do.
So it's not just about duty then?
No, it's also about societal pressures,
Uh-huh.
maybe even prejudice against Ruth because she's a foreigner.
Yeah, that makes sense.
He's worried about what people will think.
Right.
And he doesn't want to jeopardize his inheritance or his social standing.
It kind of makes Boaz's commitment to Ruth seem even more remarkable.
It really does. Boaz is a man of true noble character.
Yeah.
He sees beyond social conventions.
Yeah.
And he recognizes Ruth's worth.
Yeah.
He steps up, he buys back Elimelech's land, and he takes Ruth as his wife.
It's a beautiful ending.
It is a beautiful reversal of all the tragedies from chapter 1.
Yeah, Naomi's land is redeemed. She has a loving daughter-in-law, and a new heir is born to carry on the family line.
It's a powerful image of redemption
Yeah.
and the restoration of hope even after profound loss.
I love that. But the story doesn't end there, does it?
No, it doesn't. The book of Ruth concludes with a genealogy,
Oh, right.
tracing Obed, the son of Boaz and Ruth, all the way to King David,
Wow.
and ultimately to Jesus.
So this seemingly simple story about a Moabite widow,
Yeah.
it's woven into the grand narrative of salvation history,
It is. It's like a tiny seed
Huh.
sprouting into a mighty tree.
connecting generations.
Exactly, and leading to the Messiah.
That is incredible. It really reframes the entire story.
It does.
It's no longer just a personal journey of love and redemption, but a key chapter in God's overarching plan.
Right. It invites us to consider how our own lives, seemingly insignificant as they may seem, might be part of a larger divine narrative.
It really makes you think, doesn't it?
It does.
About the ripple effects of our actions, how our choices, big or small, might have consequences far beyond our immediate circumstances.
Absolutely. And it also challenges us to think about inclusivity.
How so?
Well, Ruth, a foreigner, an outsider, becomes an integral part of the Israelite community and ultimately the lineage of Jesus.
It speaks volumes about God's grace extending beyond cultural and social boundaries.
It does.
It really challenges us to examine our own prejudices
Yeah.
and consider how we might be called to embrace and include those who are different from us.
That's such an important message for today's world,
Yeah.
where divisions and anxieties about the other often dominate our discourse.
Yeah, it's so easy to get caught up in those things.
It is. The Book of Ruth reminds us that God's love transcends human categories,
Yeah.
and that true belonging is found in embracing our shared humanity.
We've explored the historical context, unpacked the character motivations, delved into the theological implications. I mean,
We've covered a lot of ground.
we have. What overarching message do you think resonates most strongly from the Book of Ruth?
For me, it's the reminder that God often works in unexpected ways. He uses ordinary people and everyday occurrences, our choices, encounters, even setbacks,
Yeah.
to weave a tapestry of redemption and hope.
It encourages us to look for God's presence not just in grand pronouncements or miraculous events, but in the seemingly mundane details of our lives.
Exactly. It's about finding the extraordinary within the ordinary.
Yeah, it's a call to pay attention to those subtle signs of grace, those unexpected encounters, those moments of kindness and connection that might be hints of God's purpose unfolding in our lives.
That's beautifully said. The Book of Ruth invites us to embrace the ordinary moments, trusting that even in the midst of life's uncertainties and challenges, God is at work, weaving a beautiful story of love, redemption, and hope. Yeah, it's like a little hidden gem. It doesn't look like much on the surface, but when you really dig in,
Yeah.
it sparkles with so much meaning.
So much truth packed in there.
Mhm.
I love that it's a call to practice radical hospitality, to welcome the stranger, to see the image of God in every face.
Exactly. It's about building bridges instead of walls, recognizing that we are all interconnected, part of a larger human family.
It's a beautiful message,
It is.
but it's also a challenging one.
It is. It requires us to step outside of our comfort zones.
Yeah, and to really examine our own hearts.
Absolutely. And that's the enduring power of the Book of Ruth.
What do you?
Well, it speaks to those deep longings that we all have for belonging, for purpose, for redemption. It reminds us that even in the midst of loss and uncertainty, God is at work.
Weaving a tapestry of hope and restoration.
Exactly. So I think the question we should all be asking ourselves as we finish up this deep dive is, if the Book of Ruth is about finding God in the ordinary, what ordinary moments in our lives might be pointing towards something extraordinary?
Yeah, what subtle signs of grace might we be overlooking? Because I think it's so easy to get caught up in the busyness of life
It is.
and to miss those little whispers of God's presence.
Right. It's a call to pay attention, to be open to the possibility that God is working in ways that we might not expect.
Through people and circumstances that might seem ordinary?
Exactly. Just as Ruth's journey led her to an unexpected destiny, our own paths might be leading us towards something greater than we can imagine.
So trust the process, embrace the journey, and be open to the surprises that God has in store.
I love that.
You too. Well, it seems we've gleaned every bit of wisdom from the Book of Ruth today.
I think so. It's been a rich conversation.
It has been. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive on By the Pages.
It was my pleasure. And remember, the journey doesn't end here. Keep exploring, keep questioning, keep seeking, and you might just discover the extraordinary hidden within the pages of your own life.
Beautifully said. If you enjoyed this exploration, be sure to like and subscribe for more fascinating journeys through the pages of Scripture.
We'll see you next time.
Until then, happy reading.